Whatever anybody wants to talk about. I just want to say, for me personally, it's a big thrill to be back in San Antonio. I've always known for years that I always had a lot of really good fans down here. Wrestling's always had a strong history here in San Antonio with Paul Bosch years ago. Happens to be the guy that introduced my dad to my mom. But a real strong wrestling history for years here. And a lot of great wrestlers came through here and came from here. And I can remember always wanting to come to San Antonio. Just always wanted to come here, and probably because of the Alamo and all the history and everything. But in the early days of WWE, they didn't run San Antonio. It was the town I never came to. So, I got my sort of launch with Jimmy Hart, 1985, I guess it was. And, for 2 or 3 years, I started, became well known with Jim Neidhart, the Hart Foundation. Still never ever I got to travel all over the United States, but I never got to San Antonio. And finally, I just came here on my own. There was no wrestling show or anything else. I came to San Antonio. And I can remember, I was fairly recognized as a professional wrestler even back then. And it still makes me laugh because I remember walking to a shopping mall right close to the Alamo somewhere. And I could see this little kid come up. He was with his mom walking. He's walking up to me and he goes, I could see his eyes get all big and it's like he's looking at me, he's pointing at me, and I go, fine, I got one kid that recognizes me. And he looks at me and he stops there and he goes, Andre the Giant. It still makes me laugh. I was thinking, and then we came here a few months after that, and it was always a really good town for me. But I always, I can say with great pride that I always worked my ass off when I came to San Antonio. I always worked really hard. I always wanted to make the fans that watch the game go home and appreciate that I always give 100%. Always had great fans, and there was always a great response. And when people tell me that they're big fans of mine here, I believe them because I just know that I had a lot of great fans here. So it's a big thrill for me to be here, and I don't know how many of you are going to get up and do a Q&A for me, but I'm happy to answer any questions you can think of. Hopefully we'll get some good new questions. I don't know how much anybody wants to hear about the screw job anymore. I'm a little tired of those kind of questions, but let her rip. Ask me anything you want. Let's have lots of fun, and I'm yours.
Okay. Okay, sorry, I'm kind of geeking out right now. I love you so much. Okay. When I was younger, of course, I used to use the sharpshooter on my brothers because they used to piss me off. I want to know, how did you come up with the move? Did you use it on your own siblings, or?
Actually, when I first used the sharpshooter, it was probably in Japan years ago. In a lot of ways, it wasn't much different than a Boston Crab. It was just a move to put on. I don't remember being any kind of a killer in Japan with a sharpshooter or anything like that. But I learned it in Japan. And it was probably after WrestleMania 7 when they split the Hart Foundation up, unofficially split us up, and sort of launched me into a singles career. And that one thing led to another. And, I moved on. But the sharpshooter, I came up with it. Vince McMahon and Pat Patterson came up with a submission hold, and it was like I went away for about 30 minutes and came back and said, how about the Scorpion Deathlock kind of thing, and I didn't know exactly what it was called. I tried to show them in the little locker room we had, and I remember Vince wanted to come up with a name for it. And I think we came up with about 10 different names, and I think I threw out sharpshooter. Vince said that's it. That was how history was made as far as the sharpshooter. And I will say this, the sharpshooter is a little different than the Scorpion Deathlock. They're not the same thing. If you watch how I put it on, and you watch how Sting puts it on, or different guys, it's a little different. I have my own way of doing it.
Thank you. Love you so much.
How's it going, Bret? My father actually got me into wrestling along with other family members, and they showed me you, and I became a big fan right away, especially with the sharpshooter. The best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be. One question though is, what is one of your most memorable matches to you?
I got a lot. The more I reflect back today on my career, every match that I had, especially the big matches, the pay-per-views, I put so much thought and so much creativity into them. I wanted every match to stand up 100 years from now as being a really good match. I think even now, you watch my matches back in even the Hart Foundation tag teams, they still hold up to what anybody does today in the ring. I mean, they're just solid, nonstop, very, very, fast-paced, and I think I always tried, I didn't like the fans to figure out what I was doing next. Like when they think you're going to go left, you want to swing right, like that kind of thing. And I think I did that very well, where I kept my fans guessing at where it was going to go from here. And when I look back on some of my greatest matches, I think if I could wrestle one guy again, it would probably be my brother Owen, for a lot of reasons. This is another guy that, me and Kurt, we wrestled so many times. We wrestled forever. We wrestled, I think, almost like a year straight. And then we got to wrestle some more, like wrestle for another half year, I think, every night. And I can remember before Kurt and I ever wrestled each other, that like some of the wrestlers were talking about, we'd like to see you wrestle. You and Kurt would be a great match. And we kind of had that locker room buzz about it, and wait to see me and Kurt lock up. And we found out after WrestleMania that we were going to wrestle. This is probably about 1989, maybe, somewhere in there. We found out that we were going to wrestle each other, maybe even 88. But I know that all the sort of locker room was getting ready. They're all pumped about it. They're watching the Kurt and stuff like that. And me and Kurt were like both really proud professionals. We both knew that we could deliver a great match. And it was like two great wrestlers are going to finally throw it all together. And I just remember the first match Kurt and I had, it stunk. It was just terrible. It was like, I don't know what went wrong. And I just remember we came back and it was kind of like he was looking at me like, geez, I hope you can do better than that. I was looking at him like, what happened to you? And I know, but usually when you have that kind of situation, you're better off kind of just cooling your heels and kind of just leave it alone for a day. And then I remember we had to wrestle the next day. I think it was in Philadelphia in the Spectrum, that match. And the next day we had to wrestle in Madison Square Garden. I just remember it was the second match. We kind of had almost the same type of match. And it was like great. And we had the same great matches every night, but the first one was terrible. And I don't know why that is, but it's not easy to have a good first match with somebody. And you asked me about your question about matches I'm really fond of. I'm fond of the guys that I worked with that were really safe, really solid, really set a good pace for the match and tried to deliver a great match for the audience. WrestleMania 10, when I wrestled my brother Owen, we never wrestled each other before, and believe it or not, I wasn't that familiar with Owen's style that much because when he started wrestling, I just started WWE and I was on the road all the time. I would always hear my little brother's doing really good and he's done some amazing stuff off the top and all that kind of stuff. And I really didn't know. I saw tapes and different things of him, but I really, when going into WrestleMania 10 with all that pressure and Owen being his biggest part of his career, biggest moment of his life. And I just know that how hard that is to have a great match in your very first time with two guys that are not familiar with each other. And we went out in Madison Square Garden, and I thought there's some brilliant stuff in that match. And I remember Owen, he came we met me at my dad's house about 2 or 3 days before we left. We were just kind of talking about ideas about the match, and we had kind of had some basic sort of ideas about the match. And I remember I came up to Owen and I said, forget everything we talked about. We got to change everything. We can't do the match that we were talking about. I said, you got too many great moves. Like, the whole idea is for you to launch your heel career here. And if we do the match that we've laid out, which is a great match, they're going to be cheering you after about 5 minutes and be booing me on it. I said, that's not very good for you if your heel run, and that's not very good for me with my babyface run here. So I said, we got to change everything. And we sat down in my dad's basement. I just remember sitting there kind of just talking to each other. We just changed the whole sort of tempo of the match and just made my brother Owen just a little bastard all the way through. He was just, when you talk about it now, it's like it was such a fun thing to sit there and sort of create all these things for Owen to do that were going to be really devious. Bite my fingers, I don't know how many low blows he gave me in that match, but he was a dirty cheater in that match, and that's what gave Owen a real good launch this heel run, and we had I think the first match was pretty good. People always talk to me about WrestleMania 10, but I wish the WWE had taped or videotaped some of the matches that we had probably 6 weeks later, maybe the next 2 or 3 months later. They were just that much better. They were like, it was hard to top WrestleMania, but we had so many great matches right after, within a few months of getting our timing down, and the crowds were behind me and against Owen so strongly, and the storyline was really took root, and it was great. I know Owen, he loved being a heel. He loved being a bad guy, and if you knew him, he was like the nicest guy in the world, but he just loved being a bad guy. And I can say the same for me when I was tagged up with Neidhart. It was always a lot of fun being a bad guy. It's always one of the better parts of the job. It was a good way to let out a lot of aggressions.
Well, you were good at it, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, Bret, I always thought this is the first convention I've come of this sort, and I always realized ever since you wrote your book that if there was ever the opportunity to meet you for a meet and greet or sign, I would go for it. So I did in a heartbeat. With that said, thank you for signing my items. I knew you were out there and you were so gracious about it. But I always thought, what would I say to you? Do I have a question? I don't have a question, but I always thought about it, and it's to thank you for your integrity. And that's what it comes down to. Your integrity is so meaningful for everybody. For me, I grew up watching you, and I remember loving to watch your matches. I wouldn't order a pay-per-view if you weren't on it, because it was so expensive at that time. And of course, me having no income, that was the main reason. But thank you for your integrity, and I guess I do have a question. You coming back to the WWE, how did it happen when we wrestled in WrestleMania 26? You were inducted in the Hall of Fame first, and of course your father, Hart, as well. But how did that happen? How was the phone call? How did it happen when you decided to do that to wrestle Vince McMahon at WrestleMania 26?
Well, it's probably not what you imagine. You can only get mad for so long. I wrote my book. It took me 8 years to write it, and I think when I started, I said, I'm going to write everything that happened so that everyone knows what happened was my side of it. And I wrote it with a lot of angst. Not that it's an angry book, because it's not. I took a lot of angst out of the writing. But when I actually sat down to do it, it was a real serious work. I dedicated my life to it, including I had my stroke while I was writing that book. But I realized after the book, and I'm really proud of my book, I think my book was my single greatest accomplishment. And when I finished it, and it came out, and it it was, everyone read it, and I was really pleased with the success of it and whatnot. I realized after a little while that it's like, everybody thinks I'm this angry man at home that's just never got over what happened, and I'm sitting at home with my fists clenched, and for a long time I was that guy. But I just didn't like it. I said, I don't want people to remember me as being this angry, that I never got over what happened, and with Owen, and my screw job, and WCW, and I just wanted to, I don't want that to be the final, like they just remember, like poor Bret Hart, he got screwed, and all this stuff happened to him. That's all we remember about it, kind of thing. So the more I thought about it, I thought, you know, I just, I don't know, I think over time, I did learn that I try to look at things from the other side. Look at it like, so I'm always going to be indebted to Vince McMahon. I mean, there's 50 or a couple hundred wrestlers back then, and he looked at all of them and came out of that and picked me to be the one guy to be the star of the show and the champion. And it was a big honor to be picked and to be, you know, given that honor of being the champion of the company. And, you know, my relationship with Vince and actually Shawn Michaels for years was, you know, Shawn came up to my house, he played with my kids. We were really good friends for a long time. Vince was like a father to me, and I say, tell that to people, it was true. We were really close. And when all the, I will say that I think everything that happened with the screw job was probably more Shawn's fault than mine. But Shawn had problems at the time, and, you know, it's a shame, but I wish that a lot of it never happened. But I think how it all started with the sort of the Peachtree deal, whatever it was, came from. I think I'd seen Natalia Neidhart and Tyson Kidd and Davey Smith, Harry's son, and they had told me, they said that Shawn told them that he was sick, still so sorry about everything that ever happened, that he knew that I wanted to kill him, as if he ever saw me anywhere, I was going to attack him and tear him to shreds or something. He goes, I just feel like flying up to Calgary and just telling Bret Hart, just walk up and say, do whatever you want, get it over with, you know. And so then I told Natty, I was kind of surprised by that. I said, you know, just tell Shawn. I gave her my number. I said, just tell him to call me. Just call me. And we could probably, I think it would be good for both of us to bury the hatchet and kind of smooth things out. And, you know, he never called me. But I had my right knee replaced. And, you know, in St. Al's had my stroke in 2002, and I remember being in a wheelchair, and, you know, a stroke is a really shitty deal. I got a shitty deal for a couple of years there with that stroke where I was in a wheelchair and trying to pull myself back to my feet. And I can remember thinking at that time that if I could just picture myself, even in the Hall of Fame, walking out, if I could just walk out, and, you know, say something at the Hall of Fame or something like that. It was so hard for me to visualize or think that I could do that, and which is one of the reasons I probably would have been better off not doing it. But anyway, I just kind of, there was parts of me that started to think like, you know, what if I did go back? What would happen if and I thought about it, and anyway, so about 2009 or 10, I guess, I got my right knee replaced. And that was my real bad knee for a long time. And the doctor told me it was going to be 6 weeks of hell, and he was right. It was a nightmare for about 6 weeks. The pain and everything, especially in Canada with the cold weather. And then I flew to Hawaii, where I have a home down there. Because I was allowed to fly for 6 weeks because of the surgery. And anyway, I landed in Hawaii, and I remember throwing my cane away. I didn't need the cane anymore. And I remember running up the steps to my house. And you know, for me, a pretty good clip anyway. Not faster than I moved out on the stage a minute ago. But anyway, I ran up the steps, and I remember feeling really good about myself. I thought, I could do something. I could feel it. It's like, I want to motivate myself. I want to do something. And so it was my idea. I picked up the phone right there. I was so happy with how my knee felt. And I called up the WWE. I actually talked to a guy named Kevin Dunn, who was Vince's right-hand guy with the television. I said, I want to do something. I want to come back. I said, I can't do much, but I can do a little bit. And we kind of talked about it. And I said, I want to come. I'd like to bury the hatchet with Vince and Shawn and Triple H. And I'd like to be on good terms with everybody if I can. And that was probably February of that year, 2009. And I never heard back. No one called me. They would call me right back the next day or something. I never heard anything, so I just kind of gave up and said, if they're not interested, that's fine. You know, I thought it was something maybe that they might want to do. I could see reasons why you wouldn't want to do it. So I didn't have any big problem with it. I just never heard from them again for about, I don't know, 6 or 7 months. And all of a sudden they called me up and they said, Vince wants to have a meeting with you. And we started with the ball rolling. And even then, I was sort of negotiating and talking to Vince about it. I didn't sense that they were very keen on it. I think I thought of it as more of like, I don't know, my attitude was I kind of felt that thought they were doing me a favor. And I was like, if you think you're doing me a favor, then I don't need to do it. Like, I'm not doing this for a favor. I thought it was something I wanted to do. And Vince came back and said, no, we really want to do this. And he gave me a whole different, just talked, he really wanted to do it and talked about how good it would be for everybody to do it and be good for the fans. And the thing got back on track and there it was. But the whole thing with Shawn was real. Even the day we met, we texted each other a couple of times, which is quite strange when I think about it. I didn't know what was going to happen when I saw Shawn. I had a lot of old feelings still there. But when I finally saw Shawn that day in, I think it was Fort Wayne, Indiana, or something like that, Toledo, or I can't remember that first, Dayton, Ohio, I think is where it was, the first night I came back. But I remember I saw Shawn for a couple of seconds, and I said, you know what? Let's talk in the ring for real. Let's do this thing like off the cuff for real. We don't want to be doing it in the back room where the catering is, where it's like we finally bury the hatchet. So I didn't say one word to Shawn really other than like we'll talk in the ring. And when we went out to the ring, or when I went out to the ring with Shawn, all that was pretty unrehearsed and pretty real. That was just him, me going out there and the fans. And, the reality was that, we really were friends at one time. And whatever happened to Shawn to get where he got. I did my share of provocations back then. I'd find ways to get even with Shawn, sticking up his butt with little things that, like the Playground magazine stuff, I don't really bother him. But it's funny that even that, when I think about those days, I remember telling Shawn, I said, which completely, it baffled me as to why Shawn, being the new champion, would pose for Playground magazine, naked or whatever. That's such a dumb idea. So I remember when I came back, I talked to Shawn the night I signed my contract back in WWE in '97. Came back. I remember I said, is it okay if I go out there and I'm going to talk about you being on the Playground magazine and not being a good role model and stuff like that. Shawn was like, sure, go say whatever you want. He didn't seem to care. I don't think he realized, But so I went out, did my interview, and I think I said something about Shawn not being a good role model and posing for Playground magazine about that whole thing up. And I think I did it in a pretty blistering kind of way. And when I came back to the dressing room, I just remember Shawn was like white as a ghost. He was like, couldn't believe I said all that. And I remember going, how was it? I thought it was pretty good. And he was crushed. And, part of me knows, like, okay, I didn't need to stick it to him that much. It was kind of, it was a little excessive sometimes on my own, like where I was just trying to sell tickets. But anyway, I had my hand in my part in sort of the hostilities between us. And, I'm sorry that it ever got to that. I wish that I wish I'd never gone that way. It's too bad that after 1997, like when I think of that year, some of the matches I had with Undertaker, and Steve Austin, even Iron Man match with Shawn, there was so much left for me to still do in the WWE that it's a shame that me and Shawn didn't have, a bunch more matches for the next 5-10 years. Same with Steve Austin, same with Undertaker, same with Owen, and even the guys that came in after that. There's so many guys that I missed that opportunity with, and that's lost forever. It's just a shame. There was consequences, all that kind of stuff. But, I still stand by what I did. I wouldn't change a whole lot of what I did. I stood up for myself. I tried to be a good champion. At the time, I never thought Shawn was the right metal for a champion. He was, I don't know, he had problems, but that way he wasn't the best role model in the dressing room or outside the dressing room. I really tried my hardest to be an exemplary role model, not just to the fans, but to the wrestlers in the dressing room. And, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with being the champion that people don't see. You got to do morning radio shows, you got to get up and talk shows in some cities, like media, and you got to meet Make-A-Wish kids, and you got to meet somebody's boss. There's a lot of, it seemed like I got pulled a million different directions 24 hours a day, and I'm sure John Cena's got the same story today. But it's hard being the champion, not to let it wear you down. And, I never ever got worn down. I was always for the fans. Always had time for one more autograph. It was important to me I remember being a young kid, and asking wrestlers for autographs for years, especially when I don't know how many autographs, I had the same guy's autograph 300 times, and I'd still come up to him in back of my dad's wrestling when I was a kid, and ask the same guy to sign my program again. And they usually would. But it was important, that little moment of, that moment that you have where you ask, it takes a lot of, when you're 7 years old, it's not easy to walk up to some big guy and like, can you sign this? To tell your name. I just remember it's all part of the package. In order to be a really great wrestler, you always have to appreciate the fans that support you. And, that was a big part of my career. I always tried to be a champion, always tried to be a good role model. And I don't know if I was always a good role model, but I was always a good role model in front of my fans anyway.
And you carry that until now. I know when you shake my hand, I felt that. I felt that you really appreciated me being in that line. And that's what I want to thank you for. So I thank you for the integrity, and I cheered you on when you spit in Vince McMahon's eye, which was an incredible spot. When you pulled Shawn Michaels' hair, I read your book, and like I said, I'm a big fan. The reason I did this whole thing was just to meet you. You made my day just by shaking my hand and really making me feel that you cared, that I appreciate you very much. You are the best.
Thank you.
That's the best part.
I used to practice spitting on stuff all the time. I could spit on horse flies and stuff like hit them about 10 feet. When that spit came on Vince, after about 25 minutes of, banging around with Shawn, I just remember that was such a good horker. It was the spit that wouldn't go away. I remember him wiping it off his face. But I'll say one thing. You have to say a lot about Vince McMahon. Is that if someone told me in the new video game, or maybe it's last year's video game, that there's actually a part where my character spits on Vince and he's wiping it off. If you had told me back when I spit on him that someday it's going to be in the video game, I would never have believed it. I think that says a lot about Vince, and he's willing to live and let live, Okay, go ahead with your question.
Yeah, I do too. And
I remember that match. When I was about maybe 5 or 6 years old. Iron Man match, of course. But I was a fan of you. You know, Hitman had the glasses on and everything like that. And I think it was my mom. My mom, she, of course, you know, loved Shawn Michaels and everything like that, right? She tells me that, you know, Shawn Michaels, he's from here and everything. And, you know, you should go for him. I'm like, no. Hitman, you know, like, that's all going on. But I know you mentioned about Owen, you know, he was one person you want to wrestle again. Maybe, you know, a couple years back or today or whatever you would like, if you were sitting down and you know, maybe planning a special match, maybe one you never got around to, you know, where would it take place? Who would it be against? What kind of match would it be? Do you have any, you might have an answer for that?
Well, in my fantasy or in my head anyway, I would love to if you took Bret Hart circa 1997 when I was with the Hart Foundation and Pillman, and that was such the attitude era, I guess, as the beginning of it all. And I sort of loved that my character. He was so stuck on his beliefs, which were, you know, from a Canadian perspective, back home in Canada. I got voted number 39 greatest Canadian of all time because. And I think all the scientists and doctors and people that have actually done great things with their lives that are not, they're somewhere number 50 or whatever they are, you know, number 39. I mean, it's a huge compliment, and it's like, you know, I think that character that I had in 1997 was so much fun and actually meant a lot to a lot of people. I don't know that he was wrong in his positions. But I would love to have seen that Bret Hart character wrestle the John Cena character that's out there today. Whenever I watch John Cena, it's almost like it makes me feel sad. Or match, please, you know, give me John Cena for just 20 minutes. I'm sure I could give John Cena the best match he ever had. And I think John Cena's a really good wrestler. I think I could bring so much out of him, even more than what he's got. He would have been ideal to wrestle. He's just the perfect kind of baby face for that badass Canadian I was in 1990s. It would have been a good, that would have been a good match.
Thank you very much. You mentioned earlier about your match with Owen at WrestleMania 10. That's probably one of my favorite matches ever. My top 3 favorite wrestlers ever are you, Owen, and Randy Savage. My favorite parts of your book were the road stories and the behind-the-scenes kind of things, and stuff that happened on the road. And I was wondering if you could share any funny Owen or Randy Savage stories.
You know, I like your selection. I think Randy was one of the greatest of all time. He was such a great wrestler. He was a real champion and a real leader in the dressing room and a guy that had respect for everybody. And one of the hardest workers there ever was. And everyone, you know, the family, the history that Randy had with his dad and his brother and his, you know, I miss Randy a lot. He was one of the real heroes of wrestling. And my brother Owen, of course. But, so I like your selection there. As far as stories about Owen and Randy, I got a lot of them. I'm just trying to figure out which one would be the funniest and easiest to tell. Well, I guess I can talk about it. It was, in wrestling you got the agents, usually old wrestlers like me now, that you know, a lot of them were great wrestlers. A lot of them were so-so wrestlers that, you know, didn't really have any business telling you what to do because they didn't know any. Like George Steele comes to mind. You know, he was always an okay guy and all that, but he didn't have a lot of ideas about how to have a good match or what you did wrong. When you came back, and George Steele was scratching his head, telling you how to. You know, you got to take this out of your match, or you got to pick it up a little faster, or whatever. George never had anything constructive to tell you. He didn't know how to have a good match either. And anyway, so George is one of those he was one of the wrestlers that, you know, I remember in all the crazy days with the girls and the drinking and carousing and the drugs and all that kind of stuff. And George Steele be right in the room with everyone else. He was right in the thick of it with everyone else. And, all of a sudden, like the next day, they made him an agent. And it's like taking somebody that's in the prison compound and then you make him one of the guards. And suddenly he was an agent in a tie. You know, he's telling you how to have your matches. And you walk in the dressing room at 6:30. He's looking at his watch. And at 6:31, he's going to fine you $1,000 for being late. And so anyway, I remember I wasn't too big a fan of George's then or now. And anyway, no, I don't have any hard feelings towards him, but I remember when I was champion. I've been champion about 2 or 3 weeks, and that's a big, you know, responsibility, and you carry a lot of weight with that. And I was giving Owen and the Berserker, if you remember him, I gave him a ride to with me. Because they could ride with me, and I would never charge them for trans. It was a free ride. And back at that time, Owen and me would wrestle each other and anything like that. So I was helping out my brother and helping out John Lord, letting him ride with me. And I remember it was in Hershey, Pennsylvania. And I pulled up, it was 6:31. And I walked in the dressing room. And I remember George Steele looked at me, looked at Owen, and looked at Berserker and goes, "Gotta find you." I said, "You're kidding. 1 minute late, you're going to find us?" And he goes, got rules around here, and everybody said, "Find everybody, find Owen, find." And I couldn't believe it. It really pissed me off. And I was like, but the thing about it, it really pissed my brother Owen off more. And that's, if you know my brother Owen, he's the worst practical joker. But anyway, so I remember, and I don't think Randy was a guy that he was always at odds with George Steele too. There's a lot of guys at odds with different agents sometimes. But I just remember, I don't know, a couple months later, I just remember Owen had George Steele's briefcase, his Halliburton briefcase. It was like a metal briefcase. He had all his tickets, and his passport, and his medication, and his colostomy bags, and all that kind of stuff. You know, so in a lot of ways, for me anyway, your suitcase or your main bag is your lifeline. You really need it. And they smuggled it out. I remember Randy smuggled it out under a jacket or something like that. And Owen and Randy were like two little kids. They picked this day to get even with George Steele. And I remember later on that night, driving with Owen down the highway, and I remember him taking the little whole Halliburton, which was locked up. And I remember we went over a bridge, and I remember throwing out the window. And I remember trying to what happened with George, but, you know, anyway, we got even for that.
Hi, Bret. It's a real honor to be talking to you right now. I've been waiting my whole life to be talking to you, and I don't want to waste your time, but I got two good questions for you. The first one is, when you stepped in the ring with The Undertaker at SummerSlam, as Shawn Michaels as the guest referee, what were your first thoughts?
Don't kill me. You know, I think, well, I want to say Undertaker doesn't get the credit that he deserves to be the great wrestler that he is, but he does get the credit. You know, people I think know that Undertaker wasn't just a gimmick. He wasn't just Frankenstein or one of these guys with a gimmick. I can remember with Mark, we wrestled each other, I think, a couple of times in different little situations. In fact, I wrestled The Undertaker in Survivor Series the first day he showed up at WWE. I was one of the first guys that ever tied up with him. But, you know, we had a lot of respect for each other, and at least I always thought we did, and we do. And I remember when, I think it was Undertaker came up to me, he said, "I just heard that we're going to work." I was like, I didn't know anything about it. I thought, well, that'd be great. I'd love to wrestle Undertaker. And then I remember he stopped me and he told me, he goes, this is the match I've been waiting for. I want to show everybody that I'm not just a gimmick, and that I'm not just like Frankenstein, that I walk around with the pallbearer and the urn. He goes, I want to show everyone that I can work, that I can really wrestle, and swap holds and tell a story. And he goes, I've been waiting for one guy, and you're the one guy that I can finally go in and have a wrestling match with. So, I think that's kind of what I can tell you about the match that I had with Undertaker, is that it was a match that he wanted to get the respect from the fans that he could actually wrestle a Bret Hart, not just be Frankenstein. He wanted to go in there and show them that he could actually really move and do some great stuff. And I just was saying to a fan a few minutes ago that was talking to me about, I think he had me sign a program that was the cover for that SummerSlam with Undertaker. I haven't watched that match back in probably since the 90s, 98, 99 or something like that. It's one of the matches that I miss. I would love to watch it back, and I love to watch it back with Mark. That was one of the hardest fought matches I ever had with Undertaker at SummerSlam. And the whole ending with the chair, there's it makes me laugh because Sean and we had tensions back then, right? Really were strong ones, probably at the peak of our animosities towards each other. And they worked all that in the storyline where Sean's going to be the guest referee. And, we try to create things in a wrestling match that get reactions. And I remember they had to figure out a way for me to provoke Sean to sit in the chair. And so I had said, well, I'll spit on you. I'll spit on you. I'm a good spitter. And I said, I won't spit on your face, I promise. I'll spit right on your shirt, right on your chest. I was trying to be honest. But, so I think Sean at that time, people say, what do you think tipped it over the edge? I think this is what tipped it over the edge with me and Sean, is that he understood that I was going to spit on his shirt, and I was going to spit on his shirt. But when you're, I don't know if you know the time of that match, but I think it was 30 minutes or so. It's the very end of the match, and we got a really hard pace. We worked really hard, and I was really, those last couple of seconds of that match were getting really hard. It was just a real tired match. We worked so hard, and I remember whatever it was with Sean spun me around, and I only had I think Undertaker's getting up behind me, and I only had a couple seconds to get this spit from somewhere, spit it out. I remember I was like I said, you get 30 minutes of wrestling, and you got a pretty good worker down there somewhere. I remember I just kind of off this big spit. It was like a comet coming out. I aimed right at Sean's chest. I blew this big worker, and it just flew at him. It came up in two parts. The first one hit him right here on the shirt, and I was like, yeah, bullseye. And then the other half just flew up and hit him all over. And I remember Sean counting. He had the slides. Count 1, 2. He's really mad. I'm supposed to be mad anyway. Somehow I win the title. But anyway, I knew when I did, I said, that's going to bother him a lot, especially when he sees it hanging off his nose and stuff. And I think we just joked about it a year or two ago, and he said he was okay with it, didn't bother him. But I've always thought that's what tipped it over the edge with Sean, was that worker. But it's a good spinner. What was your other question?
My other question was, when you first stepped into the ring, what did you think first?
What did I say when I was walking like this?
Yes.
It varied, I think. I don't know, it was probably gibberish. And most of the time, or a lot of the time, anyway, the crowd was so loud I couldn't really hear myself. And, you know, there was a few swear words in there, but it was usually like right on, or, you know, what a crowd, or something to myself, but I could never hear myself. I just, you know, this is the day, or whatever. I just talk whatever like nonsense came out of my right ears. It's like, what would you say? I don't know, it's like, it was always, I've had a lot of people ask me that, and usually it was along those lines.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
You've always said in interviews and in your book that you're like a movie director. You're able to see how your match is going to go before it happens. And I was wondering, if you did get to main event SummerSlam 93 with Hulk Hogan like you wanted to, how would you see that match going?
You know, I think I could have given Hulk a really good match. I would have tried to do, not that he was Undertaker, because he wasn't, never would be. But I would have tried my hardest, because I tried with every single wrestler I worked with, whether it was Isaac Yankem or Kevin Nash. I always wanted them to have the best match that they ever had with me. Like I used to think of it as dancing. We're going to dance our asses off and have the best dance of the show. And, if I'd had a chance to wrestle Hulk Hogan, I might have made most of you people in here actually believe he knows how to wrestle. I could have really given Hulk, kind of like I was saying about John Cena, but I think I could have delivered Hulk that match, and when he comes back after and go, thank you, I never had a match like that in my life. And I learned, you know, I can teach guys wrestling, and teach them how to have better matches. And like I remember even Bill Goldberg, when I wrestled Bill Goldberg in, it was a Starcade. I remember the last words I said to him before I walked out to the ring was, Bill, I said, whatever you do, don't hurt me. So I can teach you so much in the next 6 months. You're going to become a really quality wrestler after you work with me. When I teach you and learn you little things on what to do right, what to do wrong, and how to just correct all your mistakes that you make, and little things you do. And I remember talking to him. I said, don't hurt me. You know. Anyway, so much for that.
Yeah, he said, watch the kick.
Yeah, watch the kick. It was a little bit more than a kick. But I don't blame Bill, and not that this question is not about Bill. I always had a lot of respect for Bill, and I still, you know, think of him as a good friend of mine, and I don't have any hard feelings towards him. But I do have a lot of hard feelings towards Eric Bischoff, Kevin Sullivan, and the agents, the so-called agents that WCW had. They were a bunch of dorks from the start. They didn't know anything. There wasn't one agent in the WCW that knew anything about wrestling. They had no business telling anybody what to do.
Yeah, and they gave away you and versus Hogan for free on Nitro.
That's Eric Bischoff. He was so stupid. He didn't know anything about anything. He was like the stupidest idiot. Anyway, going back to Hulk Hogan, I really think that I could have given him because I was a big fan of Hulk Hogan, and when he was champion through the 80s, you know, the wrestlers, you can say all the wrestlers, all of us worshipped Hulk Hogan. We thought he was like Elvis Presley of rock and roll. He was the guy that kicked the door in for us. I don't think there was a wrestler that didn't have infinite respect for Hulk Hogan. And if I could have wrestled him, I would have done anything to make him proud. You know, really give him a great match. And it's a shame that it took a little while to realize that Hulk was not a straight shooter. He was a guy that was always stabbing people in the back and playing a lot of politics in the back. And he was not a good guy. He was one thing about Hulk Hogan was he was all about Hulk Hogan. He didn't care about the rest of the guys in the company. He didn't care about it. He still doesn't. He doesn't care about any other wrestler. He only cared about himself. And I didn't really realize it so much back then, but I just know how I was. I really had respect for him, and I really wanted to do something good for him. And when I got first told that I was wrestling Hulk Hogan, I can remember getting a phone call from Vince McMahon in my, I'll go backwards. I remember when I lost the belt to him. Vince had told me that I didn't even need to worry about Hulk Hogan, that he was only coming in to promote a movie that he was in, and that he was going to be around for a couple of months promoting this movie, and then he was going to be gone. That had nothing to do with me. And so when I met Hulk Hogan on that year, I remember he wouldn't shake my hand. I remember walking up to him and I'd say, "Hey, Hulk, how you doing?" I stood there with my hand out for about 40 seconds until I finally just put it down. And, I thought, geez, I wonder what his problem is. Suddenly I'm the champion, he doesn't talk to me. I would have thought Hulk Hogan would be proud of me, that I was one of the hard wrestlers that worked really hard, and that I'm the champion. It's got to be an improvement over that Bozo Warrior. So I thought that Hulk Hogan would be a big supporter of mine, but he treated me like he didn't even know me. And so then I was like, okay, so I don't know him either. I didn't pay much attention to him after that. And then, of course, they pulled the big switcheroo. Yoko won the belt, and Hogan got it. And I remember after the match, Hulk came up and he thanked me. And he said to me, he goes, "I just want you to know that I'd be happy to return the favor to you anytime." And I stopped and I looked up at him and I said, "I'm going to remember that." And Hulk took the belt. He had it for a couple of weeks. Business all over the U.S. and in Europe, where we were going a lot, plummeted. Business went right into the toilet right away. Because I think the wrestling fans in 94, 93, they had made the switch. They'd seen enough of this, the Bud Lake trial. They really had enough of it. It's like, I've seen it, we've done it, and, I don't want to watch it anymore. Let's try somebody new. And I was the guy now that they had put their faith behind. The fans were, they always talk about I being the champion, I never drew money or something like that, which is not true. But business did hit a bit of a slump before I ever got the belt. I always thought things were falling, and it was like, you have to give the belt to someone that's going to stop the sky from falling, and then you're sticking up Bret Hart, and it's like it stopped and started kind of come back up a little bit. I wouldn't say I wasn't the big boom that Hogan had, but I mean, I think I stopped the downfall anyway. And, so I had a lot of confidence about myself, and when I lost the belt with Yoko to Hogan, basically, I had a feeling, I said, this is going to be short-lived. Hogan's not going to last, and he's dead. His time is over now. So I thought, well, I'll just wait, I know something's going to happen. And then, lo and behold, Vince calls me up about a week before the King of the Ring. And he said, we're going to put the belt back on. And I was like, I remember listening on the phone, I was like, I couldn't believe it. My wife gave a thumbs up, like, wow, this is big news. And I said, what do you want to do for a finish? Just put him in a sharpshooter. I said, you think Hogan will go for that? He goes, I haven't talked to him yet, and I don't know if he'll go for it or not. Let me talk to him first. Don't say anything to anybody, which was standard kind of policy. So I didn't say anything, and Vince called me back the very next day, and he was like, I don't know if Vince was just trying to stir me up or add fuel to the fire. I guess that wasn't I didn't hate Hogan so much back then. I still kind of liked him. But Vince told me, he goes, Hulk Hogan said that he would never wrestle me, that he would never put me over, and that I was never that I was not in his league, and that he was going to basically refused to do it. And I guess he said a lot of things about that I wasn't good enough to beat him or something like that. And so Vince, he goes, let me have another day to talk to him, see if I can talk him into it. And he come back in the next day, and there's a lot hinging on all this stuff. You know, people don't realize back then, in say 1993, that you know the champion is the highest paid guy in the company, and that's a big money spot. And I don't mind saying that, I thought I earned it, and they take that away from you, and suddenly all your dreams are cut in half. Like you know, all the things you were going to do and pay your house off and stuff like that, you got to put all that on hold again. Now you're just one of the wrestlers again for a while. You know, like Hogan needed any more money, but I just was become a little more sensitive to the rights and wrongs of how the business works. And Vince told me that Hulk still refused to wrestle me, that I wasn't in his league, and I remember Vince saying, this is going to really piss you off when you hear this, when he said that you're not in his league. And I remember thinking, this guy doesn't know a wristwatch from a wristlock, you know. Hulk Hogan doesn't know a headlock from a headlight. You know, and here he is saying that I'm not in his league. And, well, anyway, I think that told me what kind of guy Hulk Hogan was. Then he eventually left the company, but Yoko ended up with the belt, and all that made him money for the next 6 months or so. I didn't get the belt back for like a long time. And I never thought as champion in WWE that, just to be honest, I never thought I ever got my real run. Every time I got the belt, I got cut off or detoured pretty quick. I didn't get a chance to really, you know, prove what I could be as a champion and what kind of momentum I could have and I think I did at the end, but it wasn't necessarily because of the belt. Anyways, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, you did. Thank you very much. It was an honor.
Okay. All right, so we're going to have Mr. Hart take it.
I hope it's not Jim Neidhart's head. Maybe it is. All right. Pick one right out here. Pick this one right here. 483-044.
I got half of them.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Bret Hart. The best there is.